Hi, Wake Forest. I'm DeeDe Pinckney Holly, Executive Director of Internal Communications, and this is Inside WFU Insider Perspectives. It's an opportunity for us to gather and to learn more about our colleagues across campus. This series will celebrate the spirit and ingenuity in which we all help this university thrive. I'll sit down with faculty and staff members, hear their personal stories, learn about their Wake Forest journey, and gain a better understanding of how their work integrates within the university community. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Maria Henson. She's a Wake Forest alum, a Pulitzer Prize award-winning journalist, and the longtime editor of Wake Forest magazine. Maria has over 15 years of experience at the helm of the magazine. I know she has amazing stories to share with us. So join me as we get the inside perspective from Maria Henson. Maria, thank you so much for joining me and making time for this conversation today.
It's my pleasure.
So I'm so excited to speak to you. When I was thinking about speaking with you, I actually forgot for a moment that you're an alum of the university. And so I'm an alum as well. And I feel like the longer you've worked here and been an alum, people tend to forget that. Or maybe there are new folks and they never even know that. Mm-hmm. So you have the experience of being a student here as well. So do you still think about those times when you're walking on campus or you're working on the magazine?
Yes, I've had those kinds of almost out-of-body experiences, especially when I first came back in 2010, and I would walk up some of the stairways and think, wait, I'm flashing back, to 1982. And then we're in this room which is the English faculty room. So I teach in Tribble when I teach a journalism class, and this is a place that's familiar because I was an English major and an art history minor.
Being a student here is so interesting when you come back. So you came back 15 years ago to take on the magazine. Mm-hmm. So what were you thinking? What was the process of you deciding that it was a good time to come back to Wake?
Well, I really appreciate that question because sometimes you have a question in your life, a moment that occurs to you, I wonder if it could be possible. So when I was graduating, I had a lot of support from the journalism professor who was also an alum. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be great one day if I could come back and mentor students the way he mentored me? But I went off and had a journalism career and also lived in Africa for a while. And when I came back from Africa, I was trying to decide what I was going to do next. And one opportunity had come up in California where I was living. And it was in academia. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, maybe I should come back and double check and see if there's something for Wake Forest because I could have that moment.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
Absolutely. We're so glad and grateful that you did come back. I think, you've been here for 15 years. So, and even before as a student as well. So just kind of tracking the changes and transformations that can happen at a university can give a perspective that's, really unique when you're actually working here as well. So when you think about just those times that you walked campus and maybe the stories that you created yourself while you were here, and now you're here telling stories of other people. What's your process when you're thinking about the magazine and you're thinking about the themes? I think I'm always interested. I love the magazine. It's this phenomenal work, and I know it's a team effort, but I'm always interested in the theme, right? There's always this really gorgeous cover. There's such thought that goes into pulling things together in a cohesive story. So can you tell us about that and give us inside scoop on how that works?
Well, it is a team effort. That's the first thing. And it is a little group of people, not very many for what it is. And we make it happen. But the ideas have come to me through the years based, I think, in my journalistic way, which is, always to pay attention, to be curious and look around and see what comes up. And a couple of examples come to mind. I was in Malaprop's bookstore in Asheville, and I saw this book about all these objects in New York City. I think it was 100 objects of New York City. And I thought, we could do that at Wake Forest. So that led to the objects issue. That's one of the reasons we're in this room, too, because one of the objects that I was fascinated by, we have 2 typewriters here by famous writers. One in this room, Archie Ammons, who won the National Book Award twice. And then in the library is W.J. Cassius. And he was an alum who wrote The Mind of the South. So it's looking around. One time we did all of these little plaques around campus. Not every one, but you'd be fascinated by what those stories are behind the plaques. Or Z. Smith Reynolds, did you know we have his goggles for flying that's part of our collection? All around are interesting things to write about.
I think that's our sign to go back and find that edition and refresh ourselves because you're right. There are so many things on campus that we just take for granted that we may walk past. And there's such a rich history that's here. I think for faculty and staff in particular, when we're kind of like, have our heads down, we're working, sometimes we omit the time that it takes to really just appreciate the campus and appreciate the things that are around us. And the magazine does a phenomenal job of bringing those things to light and bringing those stories to light. So I have to imagine, you don't only serve as editor, but you've written quite a few pieces for the magazine. Can you reflect on maybe a piece that will stick with you, if that's a fair question, or something that just kind of resonates with this period of time that you're in?
I have a couple I want to mention, but there have been so many through the years that have been just so fun to write about. This one, because of my art history background here at Wake Forest, is about a woman in Marfa, Texas. She gave up this frenetic art career in Brooklyn to take her art career and her family to the wild western plains in Marfa, known as a really artsy community. And I got to start a story with the words, "Follow me to El Cosmico," which, it's like, for a writer, those are the words you want to start. And El Cosmico was the campground where I stayed in a little pink trailer to write the story about this really amazing, world-renowned person who's running the Chinati Foundation. The other one is, and there's, like I said, too many to name, but I had my eye on this Ethiopian shepherd, Wubetu Shimalash, and my friend Mary Dalton and I went to Ethiopia to trace his origins and his family in the way far off village of Argon. And he ended up in a most amazing story of getting to Wake Forest, thanks to the founder of Tom's Shoes. I had to ride a mule, which I would not recommend, but I had to ride a mule to do this story. And then Mary also wrote a small video, or did a little video about it too. We had quite the adventure.
It definitely sounds like it.
And he's a filmmaker, award-winning filmmaker in LA right now.
That is an amazing Wake Forest story on so many different accounts. And I think, I've heard you talk about coming back to Wake and not just wanting to steward the magazine, but wanting to work with students. And I think that's a great testament of being able to, come across a story and follow it all the way to Ethiopia.
All the way to Ethiopia in some very interesting conditions, I have to say.
Yeah.
When I looked at the holes in the ground, I said, "Are these snake holes, Wubetu?" And he said, "No, those are rat holes." In other words, that's okay. So, okay, well.
So you mentioned Mary Dalton, and, I was a comm major, so hi, Professor Dalton. It's just amazing to think about how this place works, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that story is also a good example of the interconnectedness and the collaboration that happens across spaces on campus. Are there other examples of that you could share? Just thinking about like the magazine and, how the magazine team even works across campus with different folks.
Yeah, I think when I look back on one of the magazines that really made me proud, and it was a really hard one, because of the wrangling of the cats all over campus. We did the community issue, and Ken Bennett, who was the university photographer at the time, set up the shot, and we invited, you cannot imagine, we had one of my friends who was a medical doctor here in Winston. We had a young student from India who now runs tiger safaris in his home country, Suyash Kashari. We had Reed Morgan from the legal counsel's office, President Hatch, and Peter Carroll. We had all these people lined up, and it was a gatefold, so you opened up, and then you learned about the community of Wake Forest, which is what I think the key ingredient is, and has been the real pleasure for me, which is this is a place of relationships. This is personal relationships that last a really long time, and they need to be nurtured, and I hope that the magazine has done that on all sorts of levels.
I think it has for sure. I mean, again, as someone who receives the magazine, I think there's always those hidden stories and people that, although this is a small community in some ways, in many ways it's not, right? So it really does a good job of opening us to each other in a way that I think can be challenging, even on a campus of this size. So you mentioned those long relationships, and, I've also heard you refer back to your freshman year, your first year here at Wake. And, you still hold close some relationships that you met in your residence hall in freshman year.
Yes.
I think that speaks to that connectedness that you carry with yourself.
So tomorrow I'm going to celebrate 2 birthdays, mine included, with there's a group of us. There's 7 of us who lived on Freshman Hall together in Bostwick, and we were the whole hall was Bostwick Chicks 5656, and that's the extension that was the hall phone. The RA at the time was Donna Edwards, and she's the first female congresswoman, African American congresswoman from Maryland, and now she's a trustee. And she had to really put up with a lot of shenanigans because we were wearing togas. It was a time of Animal House and Grease. We would play the air guitar. But, I get to see her now at trustee meetings, and we laugh about those times. So these friends of mine, we have been through thick and thin together, and we were celebrating our birthdays in 2020. We were going to go to Antigua together, and then COVID happened. So we had to put it off for a year, but we did it, and we are still celebrating birthdays and also being there for each other in hard times too.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of celebrations, also at the time that we are filming this, Maria is on the verge of retirement. And so I just want to say congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So how does that feel after 15 years?
Well, I don't really feel ready in one sense because I feel like I've still got a lot of energy and excitement around things. But, I'm calling, I have like a few mottos. One is certainly not original, which is I'm going to call it my inspirement. And then also the Renaissance years, because I see it as a time to get out from underneath what has been a long period of deadlines in my life, really hard, at times being a Washington correspondent and a State House correspondent, running at deadlines, running after Bill Clinton to get quotes. And then now I get to stop and be on my own program. So I'm going to go on a solo retreat in Colorado for 12 days. And then I'm going to be in a painting class. And then I'm going, one part of a trip is to Tunisia to see the family of a Wake Forest graduate I befriended. He came here in January of 2021. He arrived at a really hard time. But this community gathered around him, from Res Life people to Global Studies people, to Rogan Kirsch, and Mary Beth Wallace, another good friend of mine. We all tried to make sure he had a good time and that he would be okay. And he turned out to be an ambassador for Wake Forest, and he's still living in North Carolina. But I'm going to go see his family in Tunisia.
That is wonderful. Wow. You have many plans, and They all sound very exciting. I think we can all hope to and inspire to get to inspirement. Thinking about the issue that's coming up, the summer issue, which, I believe is available now. It's the last issue that you'll serve as editor, So how does that feel?
It's funny because while we're waiting for the truck to come, it didn't make it today, but it's coming tomorrow with the print issues. And actually, they should be showing up in people's mailboxes right now. It's beautiful. The cover it's the creativity issue, and it's by one of America's best illustrators and type treatment artists. Her name is Jessica Hish. So it's like a real coup to get her to do the cover. And then there are just stories of creative thought among some of the professors and how they're working on problems, but also Nashville singer-songwriters. So it feels good. I feel like we've got a great issue to come out, and for it to be my final issue as editor, too. I'm excited about that because I think creativity is important and everyone is creative. We just need to pay attention and we need to be curious.
Feels full circle for you to have that theme around creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also heard there's actually a really wonderful piece on Maria. She's going to be too humble to say so, but there's a great piece on you as well and your service and your time at the university.
Well, thank you. I just want to point out, and I'm trying to do that to everybody, that was not my idea. That was Mark Peterson's idea. He did it in secret. But then if you're the editor, eventually you do find out about things because you have to know the page count. Right. But that was not it was not my idea to have the story, but I appreciate it.
So you also wrote a piece for the summer issue.
Yes.
So can you tell us about that piece that you've written and what inspired it and how that came to be?
Yes. Well, we have such a treasure in Renolda House here in the community, and it's not just for Wake Forest students and faculty and staff. it's for the whole community. And it's also been a real important place for people to walk and think and have solitude. And some of the Ronaldo House folks, one of whom had been my student, came to visit one day and said, don't you want to write about the Ronaldo House? And I'm like, well, what's the story? And then we started talking about a painting professor and her exhibit that was going on display for about a year. And so I was like, I want to do that. And I've heard good things about Leanne Hallberg. So that's what I did. Now, I've never had a story where one of the stars of the story was her rescue dog, because I used to take walks through Ronaldo and then into the mountains. And that's what inspired this. So the first thing that happened after I had already done the interviews and gotten the story down, the dog died. And then it turned out she was going to retire. So it made some changes. And yet it also is a story of life, right? And talk about El Cosmico. These are paintings that evoke the cosmos for her and natural phenomenon. So it was a really fun one to do in the end. It just posed some challenges along the way.
On the other hand as well, the magazine has a way of encapsulating moments in time for us. I've had the opportunity, I was flipping through some older magazines and some of them were from the time I was at Wake, and it just brought back so many memories. So it's really a time capsule in a lot of ways, even though you're telling stories, on campus, beyond campus, and in between. But it's really just a great record of, the people and the places and the feelings and things that are evoked when you think about Wake Forest.
And I always like it if there are younger alums who feel that too. I had this moment last fall that surprised me because, first of all, I was surprised. I got a call from Harvard Medical School people, and they wanted me to speak to a communications class at Harvard Medical School. Turns out that somebody in that class was a young graduate of Wake Forest, and she was typing away to me, I'm so excited you're going to speak to my class by Zoom. And then she sent me a picture of a huge poster board. She'd been collecting magazines from her time. And this poster board was like her vision board, the story of her life. She was so proud of it. And of course, it made me feel good that the magazine had meant that much to her.
Wonderful. She is not alone in that feeling. So great job for you and the team. I know it's a challenge. I think, what are some of the things that people don't think about when they think of the magazine? One of the ones I have become aware of is that how far in advance you all work on the magazine. But what are some of those things, I guess, that folks don't often think about? And then also, how can the campus community better support the magazine?
Yeah, the long runway is something that people don't always think about. Oh, how about a story? Can you get this in? No, because we start a long time away from the print. Now, we do stories year round. So that has given us a lot of opportunity digitally to tell stories all year. And that's very helpful. And we also collect every story tip. And sometimes they need to cook for a while, or you need to see how they'll fit with a theme. And that happens. So that's a surprise to people that we do 3 issues a year, but we're thinking on down the road quite a bit. And it's just a challenge. You've got to make it work within the budget. You've got a very small team to do that work. But it's a committed team of people who want to get it done, and they want to have a real sense of excellence about it. We've been copied out in the university world, which is nice because they take some of our ideas and do it at other universities. And we won the top award for magazines in international circles. So that was a really good day for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do remember that. I remember when that was happening, and it's a phenomenal moment for Wake Forest, for yourself as well. And I think it speaks to, like you said, the dedication that is put into really cultivating something that's meaningful.
And it also helps to have a senior vice president who is right behind you, supporting you the whole way and giving you freedom to really be creative and come up with ideas that are different and not just what's expected at an institution.
So speaking of Mark Peterson, he wrote just a really touching message, though, the proximity to you announcing your retirement. And we were able to put that on Inside WFU. I want to read a portion of that and get your response. So it says, when Maria took the reins, her mission was to move, surprise, and connect with alumni while upholding the magazine's tradition of celebrating Wake Foresters in the spirit of Pro Humanitate. She elevated every element from design and editorial content to the breadth and depth of storytelling while maintaining journalistic integrity at its core.
Well, you can imagine why I think that Mark Peterson has been a wonderful boss and collaborator for me and for the magazine, because this kind of work that experiments and does things that are unusual in the profession, it doesn't happen unless you have support from the top. And I had that from him, and my team did. And so I cannot stress enough that through the years, there have been different team members, but everybody has been committed to it. The journalistic integrity was really important to me as a journalist. Like, I wanted it to be not cooked somewhere and, quotes fixed. I wanted it to be real and authentic, because these are people worth knowing about, from those who teach to those who run the place, and then our alumni all over the world doing really good work. So I hope that we have also amplified what I think is so important here, and that is pro humanitate, because it needs to be for the greater good. What's the point otherwise?
That's awesome. I think that's a wonderful space to end. Maria, I want to tell you thank you for taking time to speak with us, and thank you for 15 years of bringing us really phenomenal stories and content through the Wake Forest magazine.